I felt the paper was a shocker, right? And it was a surprise for many.
I have seen UPSC paper for last 25 years and I think this was the toughest paper till date.
This was also a complete shocker, reason being such kind of questions have never been asked in the history of UPSC.
You know, the conventional themes that one student usually looks for in the paper to solve, to get those 30-40 sure shot answers right, was absolutely missing in this paper.
But Abhishek sir, is it for the first time the paper is getting difficult, or every year UPSC has this trend to ask question difficult or different from the last few years?
UPSC has this trend of breaking the trend itself, and this has not happened for the first time. You look at 2016 paper, it was relatively easier. 17 was difficult, and then 18 was a bouncer.
Which we are talking and about has never been for the first time.
Different type of bouncer question in your specific sections in the UPSC prelims.
For example, in environment, we had the question on Nirantar portal. Nobody, really goes so deep into the portal, and
No one had heard about it, and I felt that such questions should have been left. Such questions should not have been also discussed.
For example, the question about Mr. X being from UK and when he got Nobel Prize is in US, or the question about that the specific semiconductor plant and in which city it is located, or the question about specific defense equipments and are they being manufactured into India or not, right? So these are the questions.
So for the 2027 prelims examination, what that aspirant should do further? Shivu ma'am, let's start with you.
That emotional intelligence which you need to have, that exam temperament which you need to have, that decision making which you need to have, that will never come.
And the basics are that you build your fundamentals for each and every subject. You do not just read the subject, you understand it. You try to become a knowledgeable person in each and every subject which is part of your syllabus.
The basic approach does not change. As far as fundamentals are concerned or your foundation is concerned, reading the NCERTs, building our base. But once we will build a strong foundation, then what has to be done is the question.
Hello everyone. So recently UPSC had taken prelims of 2026, and already there are a lot of comments regarding this, that the paper was very difficult. So in order to deconstruct this particular paper, I am joined by the expert faculties of VisionIAS. Hello everyone.
Hello.
So Ram Sudhir sir, let's start with you. That already a lot of comments are going on that paper was difficult. So what is your opinion regarding the paper's hardness?
Yeah, I felt the paper was a shocker,
Right.
and it was a surprise for many. Surprises were always there in UPSC preparation, but this was a little different from the earlier surprises.
Right.
So why was it different? Because we generally prepare as per the previous year question papers. But this was something like last 5 years question papers don't appeal to this question paper. So that is the reason as soon as you see the paper, you find it impossible.
Right.
And those students who would have adjusted themselves in the first 15 minutes probably would have had a better chance in dealing with this paper.
Right. So any other opinion regarding the paper's difficulty level?
Yeah, so as sir said, this was, I think, perhaps I have seen UPSC paper for last 25 years and I think this was the toughest paper till date. And it was tough, as I have said before, on many accounts. First, it was surprise. There were a lot of surprises there. And surprises were in the type of question they asked.
Right.
And the questions were very, very lengthy. And many questions were very, very factual and specific facts were asked. And that must have created a lot of anxiety in the examination hall itself.
Right.
I completely agree with Abhishek sir on this, that the paper was lengthy, the paper was full of surprises, as Ramsudhi sir has also mentioned, right? I would like to add to the difficulty level, which might have also taken a mental toll on the minds of the student, was that they were not expecting such kind of newness. Right? There were questions which not only gave them the shocker in terms of what have been asked, rather an assertion was given in a very different way, that they had to infer the information from the given statement. This was also a complete shocker, reason being such kind of questions have never been asked in the history of UPSC. But such things do have a toll, and I completely sympathize and empathize with the students, and that is how UPSC has been, that they you know, they gave you these kind of shockers and you have to be little bit, you know, calmer at that point of time.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Gitika ma'am?
So yes, Vishal, the paper was difficult on many levels, and
Right.
not just the fact the questions were difficult. First and foremost, paper, the length of the paper itself, the number of pages has risen considerably, which we
Right.
normally don't see. Second thing is the sections that students usually rely on for cracking this paper, for example, the polity, the geography, those were missing. You know, the conventional themes that one student usually looks for in the paper to solve, to get those 30, 40 sure shot answers right, was absolutely missing in this paper, which made it very difficult to mine those questions which are attemptable.
Right.
Third thing is every question, the format of the question was very unique and difficult. First you read the paragraph, then you read the statements, then you had to check how the statements are interlinked with each other, and then finally at the third level you arrive at the answer, which is checking A, B, C, D.
Right.
So this makes the paper all the more difficult, and bouncers, of course, questions which were completely unheard of or which you knew you could not prepare for. That is another problem altogether.
Right. So the length of paper that you are talking about, the framing of option, this makes paper comparatively difficult. But Abhishek sir, is it for the first time the paper is getting difficult, or every year UPSC has this trend to ask question difficult or different from the last few years?
Okay, so your question is that has it happened for the first time? And I would say that UPSC has this trend of breaking the trend itself. That people have certain notion about that what type of question will be there, and based on that what will be our approach. And this has not happened for the first time. You look at 2016 paper, it was relatively easier. 17 was difficult, and then 18 was a bouncer. And then you see 19, 20, again none of them are easy, but they are traditional paper. And then you come to 2023 and it is a completely bouncer paper.
Right.
And similarly 2014, 24, 2024, 25, and then you have 2026. It is a completely bouncer paper. So no, this has not happened for the first time. And we can talk about the larger reform which is required in the process because of the element of luck in prelims paper. But as long as this is the reality, we have to accordingly change ourselves and how we prepare and how we approach the prelims examination.
I completely agree with Abhishek on this, that, you know, UPSC has this tendency of breaking the pattern. I would like to add to more pattern break which UPSC has displayed. It's not only in terms of the shockers, it's also in terms of how UPSC has asked the variations in the formats. How UPSC has changed the weightage of the subjects being asked. These are also included in the shockers, which we have not seen for the first time this year. So if we start with 2014 itself, right, 12 years ago, there have been questions asked from art and culture, history, which was again seen, right? So this pattern breakage which we are talking and about has never been for the first time. And I feel that whoever has read and gone through the UPSC PYQs, they are familiar with this pattern break, and this is what we all have to prepare for, right?
So talking about the bouncer question that UPSC keeps on asking in different years. So Gitika ma'am, like what were the different type of bouncer question in your specific sections in the UPSC prelims?
Well, there were many bouncer questions. I mean, we all know the questions on Army Corps, the BIMSTEC question. There were many questions which, you know, were very difficult. For example, in environment, we had the question on Nirantar portal. Nobody, you know, really it goes so deep into the portal and who is the main body which is taking care of it. It was difficult.
Right.
But what I want to highlight here is the fact that easy and difficult cannot be decided in the first 15 minutes. We must understand the student psychology.
Right.
This happens when you are reading each and every word carefully of a question. There and then something clicks.
Right.
For example, the question on, let's say the question on mangroves, or let's say the question on Amur falcon. It tells that, you know, the GPS tracking agents would guide the birds. Obviously, no, we don't have that kind of technology yet which would guide the birds. It was a very lengthy question, but once you start solving it, you know, no, this is a trap, and on the basis of which you can eliminate the options. So never in the first 15 minutes make up your mind that I am going to attempt this many questions because this is how the paper looks and feels. That will not happen. all that will only happen once you start attempting each and every question. So my advice to the students is, please read each and every question in silos. This question, yes, no, doable, not doable, or do I come back to it again later?
Right.
That's the only 3 categories we have to work on.
Right.
And then accordingly decide. Once your entire paper is done, which was difficult in this case,
Right.
because 2 iterations was not possible. But at least that clarity should be there in the first reading word by word, whether this question itself is doable or not doable.
So yes, Vishal, certainly I felt that particularly when I talk about my subject, history and culture, there were many questions which had to be left. There were many questions which were bouncer. Place value system किसी को पता नहीं होता है. No one had heard about it, and I felt that such questions should have been left. Such questions should not have been also discussed. That, you know, why there are certain questions which are getting discussed, that how do we prepare on them. UPSC is about checking the mindset of the student. It is testing upon the judgment which they have to take and make during that moment. Being a future administrator, obviously UPSC is setting the paper in such a style that you have to have that kind of decision-making skill to leave certain questions. And the skill of leaving the questions, the judgment, the decision which they have to take at that very moment is what also UPSC will check, right? So that is again very, very important aspect which the students have to understand, which the future aspirants also have to understand, that you can't prepare for everything. And UPSC is not about preparing for everything. UPSC is about how one should have also left certain questions, certain things which are beyond the temperament, which are beyond the judgment, they should simply leave.
Can I add few more things
Yes,
here?
yes, please.
So I will first give few examples of bouncer questions, also perhaps few examples which could have been attempted. And however, I will also acknowledge that it is easy for me to do that outside question paper. I'm doing a post facto analysis versus when you are in the examination hall and you look at this paper and you are anxious. So I know that these are 2 very, very different scenarios. It is easy for me to comment here. But at the same time, having said that, I will give you a few examples of questions in science and tech which you should not attempt because they are such specific facts. For example, the question about Mr. X being from UK and when he got Nobel Prize is in US. Or the question about that the specific semiconductor plant and in which city it is located. Or the question about specific defense equipments and are they being manufactured into India or not, right? So these are the questions. But at the same time, look at the question about AI summit which happened in Delhi. You look at this question, it's a very lengthy question. And the first fact is a very specific fact. The third is a very specific fact. The second is a very lengthy paragraph. But within that lengthy paragraph, you find that there is a binding framework. And as Gitika pointed out, that the question about Amur Falcon, the GPS guiding Falcon. So similarly, you realize that this is a summit. The summit will not lead to binding framework per se. And you eliminate that and you have your answer. So in certain questions, UPSC will give you leeway that you are able to analyze the trap and you're able to get the right answer. In certain question, they will ask you specific fact. So either they are checking that, do you know this fact? And if you do not know this fact, then this is a question which is not worthy of taking risk. And this part is not the first time which UPSC has done. They have done this in the past, as I said earlier. Perhaps this year, the number of such questions were very, very high. And that makes this particularly ultra difficult paper.
All right. Ram Sudhir sir, from the perspective of economy also, were there any bouncer questions?
Bouncer questions are there, but economics, there were some questions which were really doable.
Right.
For example, there was a question on NBFC
Right.
or crowding out effect or UPI related question. So it is, student can pick up these easy questions and probably get better scores in certain subjects.
Right.
So economics was comparatively doable in comparison to other subjects as
Right.
far as this paper was concerned.
Right.
And one more important observation from this paper is, I think it's a combination of quality versus quantity.
Okay.
So it's not that I always have a preset mindset that I will attempt so many questions.
Right.
So if I don't attempt 90 questions, I'm not going to clear. That should not be the approach. And you should be ready for surprises in the exam hall and automatically align yourself as per the conditions of the exam paper.
Right.
So,
And already the exam stress is there, and if it is difficult for one, it is going to be difficult for majority of the students who are the serious aspirants.
Yes, yes, obviously.
So as we have already talked about that there were certainly bouncer question, there were difficult question also pertaining to this particular year, but this was the trend. And talking about if a serious aspirant, that particular aspirant is going to appear now in 2027. So for the 2027 prelims examination, what that aspirant should do further? Shivi ma'am, let's start with you.
Yes, Vishal. A very appropriate question for the students who are now attempting 2027 prelims paper or 2028. I would like to tell you all that it is very, very important to understand the nature of the examination. And prelims examination is more about how many different kinds of tests you give. Because at the end of the day, prelims paper is about objective test questions. And if you are not preparing yourself to give different kinds of tests, that emotional intelligence which you need to have, that exam temperament which you need to have, that decision making which you need to have, that which questions are to be solved, which questions are to be left, which and where the elimination skill could be used, that will never come if you are not solving different kinds of tests. So have this, eye while solving the questions. The post-test analysis also here plays a very, very important role. That many students, they just give tests for the sake of giving tests. They don't understand that what they have to use from those tests. And this paper was a complete reality check to let the students know that how they have to test those mock tests and how to do post-test analysis. What is that magic number which they have to arrive to have different kinds of, patterns. For example, if I talk about an easy question, if someone is solving an easy question paper. So yes, you can go beyond 90, 95. But if the paper's difficulty level is, let's say, moderate to difficult, then you have to have that kind of restraint in your attempt. So that is also very, very important. And that is, again, one kind of way forward which I would like to give to all the students, that prepare yourself with the tests so that the prelims test papers become manageable.
Few things which I will again repeat, that this is not the first time UPSC has dismantled the trend, and this will not be the last time. Second, we can, as I mentioned earlier, we can talk about the larger reform required in the process of UPSC examination. But as long as that reform is not happening, and if you are thinking about appearing for UPSC, you have to prepare for such type of surprises. And in that, the basics do not change. And the basics are that you build your fundamentals for each and every subject. You do not just read the subject, you understand it. You try to become a knowledgeable person in each and every subject which is part of your syllabus. When you look at something from that subject in newspaper, you are able to understand it. You are able to make some, you are able to imagine that in what way UPSC can prepare a prelims or mains question out of it. So that basic fundamental, that build your concept, build your foundation, and then update your knowledge from current affairs. So reading newspaper daily, I find certain type of YouTube videos where there are suggestions that why do you have to read newspaper, or why do you have to do PIB, and look at this, if this is a statement framed like this, iska answer ye hoga, and is ऐसे statement हो तो answer ये होगा. Such type of tips and tricks will only and only help you if your foundation is very strong. So work on your concepts and keep updating your knowledge by reading newspaper by yourself, by daily updation or weekly updation from PIB by yourself, and then attempt test papers, check your knowledge, and you keep progressing. And this is a process. You need to realize that this is not a sprint, this is a process. And in that process, you have to be very, very, very consistent. So having that consistency and a clear focus on improving yourself for 1 year, 1.5 year, and that is how you are going to crack this examination.
Right. So, Ramsutir sir, your take.
One thing is, like, UPSC is all about accumulated knowledge over a period of time. And the observation is very clear. The basic approach does not change. As far as fundamentals are concerned, or your foundation is concerned, reading the NCERTs, building our base. But once we build a strong foundation, then what has to be done is the question.
Right.
So earlier also we always used to tell students solve PYQ. that remains the same. We can't ignore the PYQ.
Right.
So we have to do research on PYQs, whether it is prelims or mains.
Right.
And we also look into CDS, CAPF papers, which are also factual in nature generally.
Right.
Now this paper is tilting towards a kind of a CDS paper, is my observation. Like more factual questions started coming up. So these trends can also be seen from last 10-year papers of CDS and CAPF.
Okay.
These observations become even more important. It's not just UPSC, it's also about UPSC conducted exams.
Right.
That is the second thing which the student has to keep in mind.
Right.
Third thing is when I'm solving mock tests. Now student, when he's solving mock tests, what has to be done? You start preparing notes from the mock tests and PYQ.
Right.
Preparing notes in the sense if I don't know something or if I am not able to understand a particular concept or maybe a factual thing is coming up. So I'm ready for facts, I'm ready for concepts. I have to be ready. And for suppose, let's say the next year the paper is a normal, simple paper. After putting in so much of effort, reading all the current affairs and preparing for the uncertainty, a normal paper which used to be can come up. So this, in fact, it tells like you need to be ready for everything during your preparation time itself. So, and one more important thing is, when you read newspaper, students are like, why should I read newspaper? I'll depend on some magazine. So it's a newspaper is not that, it creates a framework, it aids your preparation, it changes your mindset. So other benefits are also there. So reading a newspaper religiously on a regular basis, making notes out of the newspaper, substantiating it with the magazines of the coaching institute, that will help the students more as far as such kind of papers are concerned.
Right. So value addition is the key.
Yes, value addition with foundation.
Right.
There can't be icing on the cake without the cake.
Yes.
Yes.
So Gitika ma'am, can you conclude like what exactly should be the approach for the aspirant?
Well, Vishal, like everybody said, you know, this paper was meant to bust so many myths around UPSC preparation. First, that static is important, current affairs is not that important, it's less. You can just do 1 year's current affair and you'll be through.
Right.
Breaking myths like current affairs, only just reading compilations and, you know, watching some marathon videos will help you sail through current affairs. That myth was completely broken because, and then the tips and tricks like Abhishek sir pointed about, you know, you can solve on the basis of the language of the paper. All these things can work in isolated cases. This cannot be your preparation strategy.
Right.
Your preparation strategy has to be wholesome. And UPSC has just made it very clear with this question paper that I am not bound by any pattern. I am not bound by any subject. I am not bound by any source, book, anything. So as a student, and in fact for us as faculty members also, we have to now prepare in a manner that is much more holistic. We have to make sure that we are telling students to repeatedly read the newspapers, which we have been, in fact, we have been emphasizing on that, and make sure that they are not looking for any shortcuts, but relying on the core concepts.
Right.
Because when your concepts are clear, when you know that this is right and this is wrong, then no matter what is the length of the paper, no matter what is the, you know, the kind of question, the pattern, the approach, everything, you can mold yourself into it. But if your foundation is not strong, then no kind of tips and, you know, tips and tricks can help you sail through. So this paper for, you know, by UPSC has just opened the floodgates. And we all have to be prepared for anything and everything that is coming in prelims as well as the upcoming mains examination.
Right. So the foundation is the key around which the student should anchor his or her preparation.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. Non-negotiable.
Yes.
Right. So I think we have comprehensively discussed regarding the deconstruction of this entire paper, and there were a lot of myths as we were talking about. We have tried to bust a lot of myths around this particular paper and the pattern that how UPSC is asking these particular questions. Thank you everyone for joining us in this particular session, and it was quite enriching session. Thank you.
Thank you.